Hello and welcome to No Holding Back. I'm Susan Estrich, your host. This is the podcast where we don't scream at each other. We actually talk to each other, get down to the real issues, have important guests who have something to say, and I let them say it. We're a little different from most podcasts in that way. I'm so happy today as I talk to you. The hostages have been returned, and I have with me an old and dear friend, Alan Dershowitz. Before we start, no one has been a better friend of Israel than Alan Dershowitz. And no one has spent their entire life, as Alan has, standing up for Jews around the world. I remember the old Refusnik days. I want to begin by just offering my condolences to Alan, because he's just gone through the loss of his amazing son, Elon, who I knew well, who was a wonderful man, who died of a stroke at the age of 64. When he was a little boy, Alan saved his life by getting him the treatment he needed for a brain tumor. And as marvelous a life as Elon lived, the hardest thing, I think, for any parent is to lose a child. So, Alan, my condolences to you. I give you so much credit for all you did for Elon in his life, and we'll all miss him terribly. May his memory be a blessing.
Thank you so much, Susan. He loved you. He loved talking to you. He found you so interesting and always so positive. When he got diagnosed with a brain tumor, I really decided to make him my project for life. And shortly thereafter, I took him to Israel, to China. I took him to Egypt. We traveled all over the world. We had a great relationship. I never thought he'd live to 64. He was told that we were told he probably wouldn't make it to his bar mitzvah. He was diagnosed at age 10, and he had 54 good years. And
Wonderful years with you.
Unfortunately, he died much too young. I'll miss him every day of my life. He produced my podcast and
I know he did.
Reversal of Fortune and the movie Fallen. And, he was a really wonderful man, and I appreciate your condolences. Thank you.
He was really talented. Alan, this is quite a day. Is the war over?
The war is never over as long as there are those who would seek to destroy Israel. We're going to see protests continuing in Norway and Paris and at Harvard and all over the world against Israel because they don't care about the Palestinian people. That's a pretense. They want to destroy Israel. Even if there were to be a two-state solution, the protests would continue because the goal of the protesters is to see the end of the nation state of the Jewish people, Israel. And so that war is not over. Hopefully the military part of the war is over. I'm glad of that. I have been in Israel recently speaking to Netanyahu about that. I helped a little bit early on during the first Trump administration process, including the Abraham Accords. And I've been in touch with Steve Witkoff and others during this administration as well. So it's a very, very important day. And the Palestinian people will benefit from this. The Israeli people will benefit from this. The Arab nations, particularly of the Gulf, will benefit from this. The only people who won't benefit are Iran and its followers and Hamas and the people who want to see Israel destroyed, including the useful idiots on college campuses today. So a good day for good people, a bad day for bad people.
What's happened, Alan? When you and I were coming of age, Israel was a nation that most people in the world supported and looked at as a beacon of democracy in the Middle East. And we rooted for Israel. Israel was the underdog. We looked at Israel as a nation state that had been born in the ashes of World War II and the Holocaust. And support for Israel was widespread, including on college campuses. Something terrible has changed. And you and I have now seen Israel become the butt of, you go on a college campus and you talk to the Jewish students, and it's true. They feel isolated. They don't dare use the word Israel. I was shocked by it. What's happened?
Well, that's only some of the Jewish students. The other Jewish students are marching with Hamas and supporting every radical cause. Remember, you scratch a Hamas supporter and you're going to find an anti-American person. These demonstrations are as much anti-American, anti-Western, anti-democratic, anti-Judeo-Christian tradition as they are anti-Israel. Israel is the current excuse for extremists and radicals. That's part of it. The other part of it is Anti-Semitism has been the norm throughout history. There was a moratorium between 1945 and say uh, 2000, but that
Yeah.
moratorium is now. And a lot of people look, if Israel weren't the nation state of the Jewish people, or if it weren't Israel that was allegedly oppressing the Palestinians, nobody would care about the Palestinians, just the way nobody cares about the Kurds. There are 10 times as many Kurds as there are Palestinians. They have a distinct language. They were promised a state by the Treaty of Sphinx. They don't use terrorism. Has there ever been a college demonstration in favor of the Kurds? Of course not, because it's not in favor of the Palestinians. They are a means toward an end. It is against the nation state of the Jewish people. At its core, it's anti Semitism, anti Zionism, anti Westernism, extreme radicalism. It's all of those things. And it's taken a terrible turn, and it's caught the imagination of lots of people. Look, Israel is not completely blameless as
Sure.
well. They have right wing people in their government who don't believe in the rights of the Palestinian people. But it's a democracy. As Bill Clinton once, I was having name dropping, I was having dinner with him, and somebody, this is when Netanyahu first got elected, somebody went after Netanyahu, and I started answering, and Bill said, no, no, let me take this one. He said, there's only one thing wrong with Israel. He said, it's a democracy, damn it. He said, when I want the Jordanians to do call them. When I want the Egyptians, I call them. But when I want Israel to do something, I got to get through the small cabinet, the security cabinet, the big cabinet, polls, public relations, the Knesset has to pass muster in the Supreme Court. It's very, very difficult. It's a democracy. They've had 5 elections in the last 8 years. And because of the failure of the peace processes in 2000, 2001, and Bill Clinton says, well, because of those failures, Israelis have moved to the right. That's a tragedy, but it's part of democracy. And moving to the right has given anti-Zionists an excuse to say, we're not against the Israeli people, we're only against the right-wing government. Also, some Israeli people themselves take it out. I call it BDS. It's BB derangement syndrome. They hate Bibi as much as Americans. Many of them hate Donald Trump, and they have that in common. They're both leaders who would win elections, but very, very unpopular with centrist, leftist, liberals, etc., to the point that it's hard to have rational conversation.
How do you turn it around, Alan? When you talk to Netanyahu, he must realize that Israel has become isolated in the eyes of the world, and that's a very dangerous place to be. That American Jewry is divided right now. I see the Jewish friends of lots of Jewish friends whose kids, I don't get it, but whose kids are out there marching with the Palestinians, and their parents were just like us. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
does
agree.
Netanyahu realize he's got a problem and he needs to deal with it?
Yeah, I have relatives who are marching with Hamas, and they started marching, by the way, on October 8th, not after the devastation in Hamas, not after the Israeli army, but on October 8th, the day after
October 8th, they started?
they started marching. Yeah, look at Amnesty International at Harvard on October 8th blamed it on Israel.
Yep.
32 organizations in Israel condemned Israel on October 8th. So October 7th was just a justification and excuse. Look, Netanyahu's feeling and Trump's feeling is basically the only appropriate response is to win militarily. Look, we would never have gotten this deal today if Israel hadn't destroyed Hamas, hadn't destroyed Hezbollah, hadn't attacked with the help of America the Iranian nuclear reactor, and Donald Trump hadn't used that and then failed. By the way, one of the reasons for this succeeded was a failure, Israel's attack on Qatar, which was stupid and inept.
It was stupid, wasn't it, Alan?
Yeah, and Jews do stupid things. Israelis do stupid things.
Yes,
They
we do.
well, the walkie-talkies was a very smart thing. The attack on Qatar was not. I've been to Qatar. I've met the emir 3 times, and he is, and his country. They're not immoral. They're amoral. They just don't have morality. What they have is a desire to see if they can maximize their position in the world. So I think it was a mistake, but it gave Trump an opportunity to make Netanyahu apologize to Qatar and then move the process along. Look, Trump, for all you can say about him, and I'm not, never been a Trump supporter politically, is an opportunist, a negotiator, somebody who never misses an opportunity to turn bad into good. He has some real talent in that direction. He overdoes it, and he talks too long, and all of those negatives that we all appreciate. But in the end, I really think he and Netanyahu were the only two people that could have brought today about. Netanyahu, by his insistence that the only way to defeat Hamas is militarily, and to defeat the surrogates of Iran militarily, and Trump using that as an opportunity to unite the Arab countries. There's a major shift in the Arab countries too. When we were growing up, the Arab countries was Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and Egypt. Those countries are all irrelevant today. The relevant countries are countries we ignored in past years. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the Emirates. Why? Because these are countries that are amoral. They don't care about the Palestinians. What they care about is their own economic survival, their own stability, because they're all monarchies, and they're all, undemocratic monarchies. And so they're the ones that Israel can negotiate with and make deals with. And what we're seeing is a shift of Arab power to the south, and to in the direction of Qatar and the Emirates. And I think Trump understood that. Jared Kushner understood it more than anybody else, and he developed relationships not with Syria and not with Lebanon, but with Qatar and the Emirates and Saudi Arabia. And those developments have really helped bring about today.
A lot of people think that Trump could have done this earlier. I saw it in the New York Times today. They lead with the headline, "The hostages released," and then they go right to the criticism that Trump could have done this earlier if he had put guardrails, I think they called it this morning, on Netanyahu. How do you react to that?
Dead wrong. I mean, the thing about the New York Times and Tom Friedman is they're always wrong, but they're always so clever about it. But they're always wrong. Tom Friedman
always wrong.
Always wrong. Tom Friedman said, "Don't go into Rafah. That'll destroy any opportunity for peace." That's what led to the end of this, killing Senwar, going into Rafah. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do other things. He's always wrong. And the only way to achieve peace in the Middle East is through strength. And you go back to the Psalms. The Psalms of David tells the Jewish people, "Hashem God will give the Jewish people strength, and only then will the Jewish people have peace." And the idea of peace through strength, exact opposite of what Gandhi did in the Second World War, when they tried to get Gandhi to support Jews against Hitler. He said, "No, no, no. Jews are moral. They should lie down in front of the tanks and let them kill." That's not the way that Netanyahu and Israel has handled this. They handled it through strength. Now the time has come for generosity. I think we're at a time now of 1945, after the United States devastated Germany and Japan. What did they do? They rebuilt them immediately. The Marshall Plan, Japan. Now is the time for generosity. Now is the time for Bibi Netanyahu to say, "All right, we welcome the possibility of a road toward a two-state solution. Now we want to send as much food and medical care." This is the time for generosity. The combination of power, strength, military victory, and then generosity is the key to why we were so successful after the Second World War.
Well, I love hearing you say that, because I'm worried about what's going to happen to this generation of Gazans and Palestinians who see their land having been, decimated by the Israelis. And I worry that these kids and grown-ups are going to blame Israel for everything, and that we're not going to get beyond the hatred that now divides the Middle East. Is Netanyahu singing the generosity praise?
Not yet. And,
How do you convince him to?
well, first of all, we don't know if he's going to be the prime minister. There's another election coming up. It'll be the 6th in 9 years or 8 years. And Bennett is running a very strong campaign. So we don't know who the next prime minister will be. As Ecclesiastes says, to everything there's a season. And the season of Netanyahu was a very important one. I think it was very important to have Netanyahu as the prime minister while Israel was attacking Iran and Hezbollah and Lebanon and Syria and parts of Iraq. this is a season now for generosity. And either Bibi has to understand that, or the Israeli people will make him understand through elections.
Where, in your sense, you've been to Israel recently. You've been to Israel, I don't know how many times over the years that I've known you. What's your sense of where the Israeli people are right now?
There are two Israels. I was there, literally, I was there the night Elon had his stroke. I was about to make a speech at
Okay.
synagogue. I had just spoken to Netanyahu. I had had a long dinner with him and his wife, and I had time with the president of Israel. There are so clearly two Israels, just like there are two Americas in many respects. There's Tel Aviv, for the most part, which is liberal and which is anti-Netanyahu, and which is Ashkenazi Jews, Jews of our background. Um,
Right.
and there are the Sephardic Jews and the Russian Jews and the Ethiopian Jews. Israel is one of the most heterogeneous countries in the world. Yes, 80% of them are Jewish, but they're Jewish differently. There are the
Right.
there are the very Orthodox Jews. There are the Russian Jews who identify strongly with their Judaism, but not with the religion. So Israel is a very diverse and divided country. They unite around events like October 7th, but only for a very short period of time. Then they break it down. And, is, for example, you and I know about judicial reform in Israel, a real
Right.
by Netanyahu and by the Netanyahu regime to introduce judicial reform at a time when there was great division in the country. Judicial reform is the kind of thing you and I should debate on one of your podcasts or one of my podcasts, or in one of my classes or one of your classes. It's very serious academic subject, how much power the judiciary should have, whether this should be a standing requirement, case and controversy requirement, whether
Hmm.
more correct or Scalia was more correct. These are interesting issues, but not issues to be taken to the street. And people take to the street in Israel over this issue because everything in Israel is divisive. Two Jews, three opinions, two Israelis, 14 newspapers. And so, we are a very contentious people. The Bible calls us people with stiff necks, and that understates it. Argument is the nature. It goes back to the Talmud. You couldn't agree. The difference between the Sephardim and the Ashkenazim are very interesting. The great Jewish philosopher Rambam, Maimonides, thought there was too many arguments within the Jews, so he decided to just write a Mishnah Torah, something that would resolve all the debates. And it failed because Jews argue; they're going to fight. Israelis argue, and they're going to fight. So I hope that today brings us a little bit closer together. But it's a process. It's not a result, a process. And the process going forward, I hope the losers are the people who want to see Israel eliminated, not the people who want to change Israel, but the Iranians and the college protesters. Have you ever heard of a college protest in America or anywhere in the world that calls for a two-state solution? I offered $1,000 reward for anybody who could show me any protest that called for a two-state solution. Nobody has come up with that. I offer it again. Why? Because the protesters don't care about the Palestinian people. They don't want a Palestinian state, except if it replaces Israel as the Jewish state. The goal of the protesters, the goal of Iran, the goal of Israel's enemies is the abolition of Israel, the nation state of the Jewish people. It's satisfying to them because it keeps Israel intact.
Is it satisfying to you?
Yes, I want a two-state solution, not this year. I want a two-state solution once Hamas is not only defeated militarily, but in the court of public opinion among Palestinians. Remember, the Palestinian people are wonderful as a group. They are innovative, they're scientific. Some of the best companies in Israel combine the ingenuity of Israeli Jews with the ingenuity of Palestinians. And I think if Palestinians and Israelis could work together and create a state, maybe it'll be a federation someday, maybe it'll be two separate states, but some resolution which give the Palestinians self-determination, the right to take out their own garbage, make their own mistakes, and elect their own bad leaders, as every country does, the same way Israel has the right to do that. That, to me, is the ultimate solution. But we're further away from it today than we were 20 years ago, but we're a little closer to it today than we were yesterday.
Where's Netanyahu on that? Is he ever going to embrace a two-state solution?
Privately, he has over the years always embraced the two-state solution as an ultimate goal. He now has a government in which he can't say that publicly.
Right.
And I don't know what his true views are. Maybe they shifted away from the two-state solution, but there was a time when he was open to
Yep.
a two-state solution. But remember, Israel has to transcend Netanyahu. Netanyahu is, your age, not my age. He's a little younger than me. He's your age. But neither of us, none of the three of us are youngsters. And the two of us are retired, mostly.
You're not
from
retired. You write 5 articles a day. That's retirement. I don't know what active is.
TV is not necessarily the future of Israel. So looking 10 years down the line, we're not going to see a two-state solution in this decade. October 7th was too raw. And, as Bill Clinton said, he had a brilliant statement just the other day, not so long ago, in which he said we came so close to a two-state solution in 2000 and beginning of 2001 when he was still president.
I remember.
He said
there.
everything they wanted, and Arafat said no. And you don't get.
Arafat said no.
You don't
I remember being at the White House when he came back from the Y plantation and he got off the plane and he was so upset about Arafat because he said Arafat has no interest in peace.
Yeah, he told me that on his last day in office, January 20th, 2001, he got calls from all over the world. And he took a call from Arafat. And Arafat said, Mr. President, you were a great president. And Bill Clinton told me, he said, I could have been a great president if not for you. You ruined it all. You could have done a great thing for the Palestinian people. And Bill Clinton believes that Arafat didn't have the courage. He thought he might get shot, killed if he accepted it. The way Israeli leaders have been shot, the way the king of Jordan was killed, original Abdullah, when he wanted a two-state solution. So it's risky to have a two-state solution, obviously, but ultimately it's the only resolution.
What do we do? And then I want to talk about your book for a few minutes, but what do we do? I'm worried that we've got the president saying he's attacking colleges and universities because of anti-Semitism. We have Jewish faculty saying, not in our name, don't do this in our name. We have Jewish students, as you point out to me rightly, who are out there marching the pro-Palestinian protesters. We have other Jewish students who feel isolated and scorned on their own college campuses because they don't join in these protests. How do we change this generation from looking at Israel as the enemy, as a beacon of democracy again?
Well, it's going to be very, very difficult. It's going to take a long time. Look, the whole issue of the Trump administration's relationship to universities is a tough one. I've been in addition to my books, I'm now on my 55th book, but I also have
55th. Are you kidding?
55th real books. And then I have 4 of these pamphlets I've been turning out. The first one was The 10 Big Israel Lies. The second one was Palestinianism. The third one has the cute title, Trump to Harvard, Go Fund Yourself. And Harvard,
a good title. We have a lot of fun together. Alan taught me how to practice law about 100 years ago. But what do you think of these attacks on Harvard and of Alan Garber, the president of Harvard, who was, I think, a good man, and the way he's handling them?
Alan Garber is a great man, is a terrific president. He's as good a president as Claudine Gay was as bad a president. That was a terrible decision. That was the low of Harvard's recent incarnation of picking a woman who wasn't even qualified really to be a dean as she was before.
Tenure.
Ron Sullivan. She was a disaster. Alan Garber is terrific. He is a wonderful president. And if President Trump were to sit down or get somebody to sit down and try to resolve some of these issues, not in a stick way, but in a way that makes some offers. For example, the recent memo that was sent around that says, unless Harvard does A, B, C, D, E, F, G, we're not going to give them access to funding. It turns out that the A, B, C, D, E, F, G are pretty good. The method by which it's being imposed on universities is terrible. And so, sit down. What are the methods? The methods. I mean, what are the goals? The goals are meritocracy. The goals are eliminating preferences based on race and other factors. And I would say of the 10 goals, 8 of them are good. I don't like the restriction on people from foreign countries, although MIT has done that on its own. It's now down to 10% because they think that American universities should cater first to Americans. I disagree with that. I disagree with a couple of the others, but I agree strongly with complaints about too much emphasis on racial diversity and not enough emphasis on intellectual diversity. But I think these are things that we can talk about, and it shouldn't be imposed by the administration on the university.
Troubles me greatly. Elon benefited from the brilliant work of Harvard doctors and Harvard hospitals. My daughter is now suffering from long COVID, which has no cure at this time. And there's important research that's been cut off in this craziness of cutting off universities' funding. And I just think that's the wrong tool to use, particularly when so much of the funding is not going to the radical libs. It's going to doctors and scientists. And what's the point of cutting off funding to them?
Of course, both of my grandchildren are doctors doing research, one at Columbia, one at Harvard, and their funding has been cut off. That makes no sense at all. Targeted defunding. I would defund the Carr Center at the Kennedy School because it's an abomination.
I don't even know what it is.
And rights. It has anything only to do with anti-American, anti-Israel. There are targeted places that you can defund, but to defund basic scientific research is absurd. It's threatening to cut off your nose to spite your face, and a right to oppose it. But we live in a world where today you have to choose sides. So it's very hard for people to say, well, I support some of what Trump is trying to get at, but I oppose the way he's doing it. Today, you have to be either 100% against Trump or 100% in favor of Trump. And that's not the world that we grew up in. That's not the world we put our students to do. You and I have this in common. We have strong views on a lot of subjects, but I can tell you in 50 years of teaching at Harvard, I never let my personal views influence my teaching. I always played the devil advocate in class.
So did I. You and I used to argue I used to argue for the rapists in your class. You'd invite me in so I could take the side of the rapists. And when I was teaching rape law.
Right. So, that's no longer done. And I think today, a lot of teachers think they have an obligation, a moral obligation, to teach students what to think instead of teach them how to think critically.
How to think.
Yeah.
Yep. Tell me about your new book, The Preventive State, and what you're addressing, because 55 books is a lot of books to keep track of. Tell me about this new one.
I've been thinking about this subject for 50 years. I wrote my first note on the law of attempts, which is essentially a preventive aspect.
Right.
The thesis is that we are moving away from reaction and deterrence to a more proactive legal system, not only in the criminal justice system, but in the environment and medical and many, many areas. We're moving toward prevention, but we don't understand type 1 errors, type 2 errors. We don't understand that we're always going to be making mistakes. And we have to create a jurisprudence of prevention, which teaches us whether it's better to make one kind of mistake than another. Look, we have a very primitive jurisprudence when it comes to reaction. Better 10 guilty go free than 1 innocent be wrongly confined. When's the last time a jury actually believed that? But that's our jurisprudence. So it's better to make 10 false negative mistakes than even 1 false positive mistake. We don't even have a comparable jurisprudence for when to lock people up preventively, keep them in jail preventively, when to take other preventive action. So the book tries to create a conceptual framework for analyzing this important movement toward prevention, which we're seeing in every aspect of our life. So, for example, I have a chapter on vaccinations. We're going to make mistakes with vaccinations. People will die. I have on my wall, I have a letter from George Washington, a handwritten letter, handwritten by Alexander Hamilton, signed by George Washington during the Revolutionary War, saying, unless we inoculate every one of our troops against smallpox, we're going to lose the war not to Great Britain, but to smallpox. And so we had to make a decision to prevent. Now, people died from the vaccination. And so you have to ask the question, how many people are you prepared to allow to die to prevent a much more serious disease? And that kind of decision making is endemic in our jail. Every day when we either deny people the right to pretrial release or grant them pretrial release, monetary bail makes no sense at all. But do we want
Monetary cash bail is crazy.
ridiculous? But do we want to have a system of explicit preventive detention where a judge says this guy is dangerous, this guy's not? That's dangerous too.
That's dangerous too. I wrote my first book. I wrote about selective incapacitation and this whole idea that we could predict who was going to be dangerous. And it turns out all the factors that predicted who was going to be dangerous also predicted who was going to be poor, black, from the inner city, etc. And the correlation didn't mean causation, and it was a dangerous thing.
It was. It started out at Harvard with two scholars named Sheldon and Eleanor Gluck, who claimed to be able to predict violent conduct by kids based on under the roof family environment. What it actually predicted was aggressiveness. It was very good at predicting aggressiveness, but if you're aggressive and you come from a very poor Irish family or black family, you're more likely to have that aggressiveness manifest itself in criminality than if you come from an upper class family, the same level that you become a hedge fund guy. You're absolutely right. And your book was very influential in my thinking as well about prediction. So the two of us together have been thinking about this subject now for almost a century. And
I know, isn't that scary? So where do you come down on the preventive state? Should courts be doing more to predict, or should they be doing less?
They should be doing. They should be very selective in what actions they take. Of course, predicting is a good thing, but it depends what you do with the prediction. If you're going to allocate resources to a community based on predicted harm, that's a good thing. If you're going to lock people up, take them off the street, that's not such a good thing. So, I try in the book to go through every aspect of preventive action and try to give some guidance as to when it's appropriate, when it's not. And I acknowledge it's a work in progress. It's something that I won't complete in my lifetime, but I want to get lawyers and law professors thinking along these lines more than they have been. That's been the goal of this book. And it's been very, very well received in the academy everywhere but at Harvard, where
I was going to say not at Harvard, certainly.
But Harvard's a very traditional place. So
they haven't invited you back, have they?
No, except I did get invited back by an Egyptian Muslim to speak at the Kennedy School about Israel. And we actually had a very good conversation. And there was some protests, to be sure. And I'm speaking at the University of Idaho this week. And already there are protests. Why should anybody go to hear a pedophile?
This is Epstein. Oh, this is silliness.
I know. You know what happened recently? It's a funny story. I go to Martha's Vineyard every summer, and I go to the farmers market. And one day this summer, I saw there was a new stand, and they were selling pierogi, and I like pierogi, so I went over and I ordered 6 pierogi. The guy says, "I'm not going to sell you pierogi. You're a terrible person." So I said, "Why not?"
Terrible pierogi.
I've only got to taste them, but I said, "Is it Israel? Is it Trump? Is it Epstein?" And he said, "Well, all three. People,
what you went through with Epstein was ridiculous. I mean, I defended you to everybody. I said, you've never met Alan's wife. It's just not true.
You're absolutely right. And,
what's going on with Trump and Epstein, do you think? These Epstein files and all that?
I don't think there's much there. I think his name is, of course, there. He knew him. I knew him. I was on his plane. My wife, my daughter, and I went to his island. When he first bought it, nobody was on the island. He wanted to show it to me, and we had dinner with Michael Porter, the professor at the Harvard Business School, and his wife, a group of academics. And so that on the list, on the list. I was on his plane. I was on his island.
You didn't know what he was doing, did you?
No, of course not. If I had any idea that he was doing that, I wouldn't have ever gone near him. And I terminated my friendship with him as soon as I heard he was alleged to have done anything like that. I became his lawyer. We made a deal. By the way, the deal, he hated it. He fired me. He wouldn't pay me my fee. He said, I'm not.
We've had that happen before.
A terrible deal, a sweetheart deal. Finally, we resolved it. But
Yeah. So what's your prediction? I know we're running out of time, but what's your prediction for the future for Israel? Is Israel going to come out of this better than it went into it?
no, it's not going to come out better. It's going to come out very strong militarily, hopefully a little stronger diplomatically. Trump put it very well in his speech to the Knesset. He said Israel's here for good. It's shown how strong it is, and anybody who wants to destroy Israel, will not succeed. Look, the Bible says that he who curses my people shall be cursed. He who praises them shall be praised. I'm not a believer in biblical prophecies, but this time it got it right. And I think Israel will remain a pariah among many young people. And I worry because young people are our future leaders. But
Right.
we'll have new leaders as well. So it's a dynamic, and it will take time for Israel to recover. But I have to tell you, I'm a believer for Jews and Israel particularly in do it, get it right, and apologize rather than ask permission and don't do it and be defeated. People love dead Jews. They love Jewish museums on the Holocaust. I don't want any more Holocaust museums. I don't want any more memorials. I would like to see Israel maintain peace through strength, It has to be categorically the strongest country in the Middle East. That's what gets the respect of the Emirates. That's what gets the respect of the Saudis. And we're seeing that action today. Israel could do a better job in presenting itself. It can do a better job domestically in trying to bring people together and not have irrelevant considerations like judicial reform divide the country unnecessarily. But all in all, Israel is in a tolerably tenable position, and it's the master of its own fate. And if it makes mistakes, hey, in democracies, as long as you're the people that make the mistake and it's not imposed on you by others, that's the nature of democracy.
I got to ask you one last question because you're here and it's not on point, but you and I started working together on civil liberties cases probably 50 years. As a kid and you were a kid. What's going on with immigration right now?
It's terrible. We're generalizing. Look, of all of the Nobel Prizes that Americans have won over the years, a very substantial plurality, including the most recent prizes, were won by immigrants.
Right.
Immigration has been the blood of our country. Our parents came over as great grandparents came over as immigrants. I don't like the president of the United States calling some countries bad names and limiting immigration. We have the right to control our borders, but we're overdoing it, and we have to be generous, and we have to understand people came to America both recently and in past days, some not legally, but they live here. They have children here. We have to be generous. We have to be understanding, and we have to do a much better job in integrating our immigrant population into the mainstream. We don't tolerate immigrants, as President Washington said in his letter to the Jewish community back in 1790. Of toleration, we no longer speak, as if it's by the deference of one group to another. We are all equal, and I want to see us doing a better job in making immigrants feel as part of the country while maintaining parts of their own culture. The balance between maintaining parts of your culture and becoming completely American is a struggle that every immigrant group had. My grandmother had it. She spoke with a thick Yiddish accent. When the Brooklyn Dodgers won a ball game, I'd come home and I'd say the Brooklyn Dodgers won. And my grandmother would say, yeah, but was it good or bad for the Jews? I mean,
right, exactly. I remember when John Kennedy was shot, and the first thing my mother said was, thank God it wasn't a Jew.
So, but we
Good
don't
for the Jews, bad for the Jews.
yeah, we don't think that way as much. And, there are some communities that integrate more easily than other communities. And so we need to strike an appropriate balance. So I don't like our policy toward immigration. I don't like what's going on with civil liberties today. You talked about civil liberties. I was, as you know, on the national board of the ACLU. I was on the
So was I. The
ACLU.
oath work.
And now the ACLU is no longer really a force for freedom of speech. It's become much more of a left-wing political cause. That's why I support FIRE and other organizations as well. So everything is in flux. And, as professors and intellectuals, we like flux, but we worry about where it's going.
Worry.
And
And worry where it's going. That's for sure.
being an intellectual, being a Jew in America, is to say it's never won. The struggle for liberty is never won. The struggle for safety is never won. It's an ongoing process. We have to make sure the trajectory is in the right direction. And you help it enormously. You've had a lifetime of incredible contributions to America, starting when you were the editor-in-chief or the president of the Harvard Law Review. You were a great, great professor. You were a great, great teacher, intellectual, public intellectual. You've contributed so much to
So have you, Alan. So have you. And I take that praise very gratefully coming from you.
Yeah, but it's been one of the pleasures of my life has been to be friendly with you and to work together on so many causes.
Well, the feeling is mutual. I've been talking to Alan Dershowitz, my friend, the author of The Preventive State, and as good a friend to Israel as anyone, on a day when the hostages have been released. Thanks for listening. This is No Holding Back. If you've enjoyed the show, you can find us at Spotify, at Apple, wherever you get on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a favorable review, and don't forget to buy Alan's newest book, The Preventive State. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on No Holding Back.